Good evening and a very warm welcome to everybody. I am Dr. Narayani Kalnawat Roy. I'm a gynecologist based in Mumbai. Today's session isn't an interview, it isn't medical advice. It's not a discussion with about anything serious. Today, it's just a conversation among peers in different parts of the world about our own personal experiences and how our lives have completely changed due to the pandemic. It is a conversation about the new normal. Today, I have with me Chinmay, who is a consultant based in California.
Hi everyone.
I have Aditya, who is an aeronautical engineer based in the UK.
Hi.
And of course, Rohan, who is a neurosurgery resident in Mumbai.
Hi everyone.
So today we have a very diverse group of people coming together to talk about this topic. So the first question I want to ask is, how has the pandemic impacted your daily life? So Chinmay, you go first.
All right. So first of all, hi everyone again. I'm so glad I can be here. I think we've looked at the pandemic from so many different perspectives over time, and we've had different opinions. Mainly, people talking about how to battle the pandemic and everything. I just wanted to talk about how it impacted my daily life being here in the US for a while. You're still away from family, and you do feel that pinch that in this kind of time you're away from your family and you want to be with them. Um, but for me personally, I used to travel a lot. Being a consultant, I used to travel um, every week. Every Monday I would go out, and Thursday I would come back, sometimes even Friday. So my wife and I, we would not get that time together. So what happened was, with the pandemic, I think it was like the second week of March, all of a sudden travel immediately stopped, and it's still not back. So when the travel immediately stopped, like, we were at home, and I sort of had gotten used to living in hotels all the time. So um, that whole lifestyle of mine just changed, and I could literally see the positive changes on me of just staying at home, even physically, even just being with my wife, spending that quality time. So our relationship has improved, or sort of gotten a little bit stronger since we got to spend that time. I could also sort of stay at home and focus more on hobbies. Like, for example, I like cooking. Other people might like other things. So I could do a lot of that. I did a lot of work around my house at that time, which I really wanted to get to for the past few years, and just got to generally slow down for a little bit, just sort of look around. I wasn't the person who would sit on the patio and have a cup of coffee, but I was doing that more often. So for me, a lot of these positive changes came about just because, the world had stopped.
Yeah, so basically, what you want to say is a lot of the stresses that came with traveling for work and being away from your wife, it basically got alleviated because that whole thing just stopped all of a sudden. And it's great, to look at it in a positive way because it actually helped you improve your relationship. It helped you just calm down, because we do know that our generation basically has a very high stress lifestyle. So, yeah, Aditya, what about you?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. Like Chinmay said, it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I pretty much agree with what Chinmay said. It was a sort of a step change, if you like. I mean, you're busy until a certain point, and then the lockdown's announced, and it just changes everything. So I lead a very regimented life. So I wake up in the morning, have a plan for the entire day. I've got to commute, I've got to do this and that. But when this lockdown was announced, it was just okay. Now what? So that was one major thing. What do I do now? Like, wake up in the morning and I'm at work. It was as good as that. So, but the downside of that was it sort of diluted the boundary between my living space and my workspace. So I struggled both ways. I couldn't detach from work very easily, and on Mondays I couldn't detach from my home life very easily. So it was I wasn't very happy about going back to work on Mondays. But anyhow, and another thing that I sort of noticed was everything became a plan. I'm not sure, did you guys feel it or not, but everything sort of became a plan. Even going out for a walk or to go out to buy a bottle of milk, you had to think about the touch points, the crowds that you're going to go into, the restrictions that you might come across, how you'd social distance, and these kind of things. And the other thing that hugely came into my daily routine was doing a PhD on COVID. As doctors, you'd obviously have heard a lot of people coming in with their advices. So everybody was doing a PhD at home, and I was one of them as well. So yeah, I think that's how my daily life changed during the lockdown. Yeah, that's what happened. So yeah, how would you see it?
Yeah, I mean, Rohan and I got married like just before the lockdown started. So we got married in Feb of 2020, and then lockdown started. And actually, before that, we barely got to spend any time together because we were both working in different parts of the city and we lived separately. And then lockdown actually, even though we were still working and traveling for work, we at least got to spend a little more time with each other and stay with each other for a while, which is I think it was a blessing. So what do you think?
I mean, on the contrary, with the world, people's life went on a slow track after the lockdown. Our lives went on a fast track, and it was completely opposite to what people were doing in the world. People's life were, I mean, at a rest, and we were running throughout the year. What I felt is, I mean, we are not getting any time to think what exactly. I mean, there were a lot of plans that one had made for the academic year, for the year that we had, but I mean, everything just turned around and we were on a fast track running, I mean, behind something. It's
Just from day to day,
yeah, from day to day.
just running from day to day.
Yeah. So, I mean, what was the actual situation in the UK and the US? Chinmay, I mean, what do you think? What, any comments?
Yeah, so with the US, right, the situation was very different than in India. What happened was immediately with the pandemic, and we do our taxes in April, just like India. And so, what happened is with the taxes, if your income was below a certain bracket, everyone got pandemic relief. So, everybody got some money from the government as pandemic relief. What happened was people were still able to keep a lot of people were still able to keep their jobs because of the possibility of remote work, and we have that infrastructure and all those things. So all of a sudden you gave this little spending amount to people. At the same time, what happened was you had your whole supply chains that were completely broken because somewhere chemical factories were stopped. There were parts being shipped from some other country at some point, and that production had stopped. So your entire assembly line was not completing for some reason, and so your supply fell. Due to that, what happened? Your demand all of a sudden increased because people now wanted to buy, and Amazon infrastructure over here is unbelievably good now. So people could just sit at home and click of a button buy things, but there were no things available. So as a result of that, we see even the impact of it today, and this impact might go onto the next year. Like you all would have even heard, like people were like fighting over toilet paper and things like that, right? And so that's a very funny thing that happened because, like, people start to hoard. Everyone thinks of like things being a zombie apocalypse, and people who just wanted maybe like a little bit could not get it. So there were limits put on every product, saying you could only buy two, or you can only pick up a certain amount. This was done to balance out the supply chains. But then what happened is, because of this, the prices have now gone through the roof, even for real estate, because people got the opportunity to stay at home. So people said, okay, now we want to buy better houses. So the market is really booming right now for real estate, which might be contrary to what we are seeing in other places. Uh, we have cars that are now more expensive, furniture that is has record backlogs right now. and people want to sort of keep buying even now. So no one's really starved for cash. Yes, there are some people in society, and we do feel for them, that who might be starved for cash or impacted because of the pandemic in very severe adverse ways. But in general, the population has the buying capacity, and there is no supply. So that is something that we see in the US right now, economically speaking. Otherwise, right now things are opening up. We are seeing July 4th as a day where the mask order would also be lifted, which means that we are at least looking at about at least 75% of the population getting fully vaccinated. So things are actually, now that curve has sort of flattened, and at least in theory we are going towards back to as it were before the pandemic. That's the language that we constantly see being used, like all your lives are to go back to as they were before the pandemic. And so the new sort of normal is not looking very different from the old normal.
What about you, Aditya?
Yeah, well, I guess so. If we talk about the UK, I'd just like to give a little bit of background to sort of put things into perspective, if you like. And the way it all started is, as you'd have seen that probably when you compare UK with the rest of Europe, it performed very badly during the first wave, and that's what led to a lot of deaths and a lot of people not being able to get the kind of healthcare that they required. But the good thing was that they learned the lesson, and they started relying on data. So they learned the lesson of the things that they'd done wrong during the first peak of the pandemic, if you like. And then they learned from that to rely on data massively. So they increased their testing numbers. I mean, even now, when you look at UK, there are about 2,000 cases coming a day, but you've still got 900,000 tests happening every day. So that was the kind of thing that UK did. And the other thing is, before we see where UK is at right now, we've also got to look at the fact that we've been in at least in the UK, we've been in a lockdown for about 7 months, and it was a very strict lockdown. And by strict, I mean you could stay outdoors for an hour and see two people, and maybe four if you're lucky enough. But otherwise, it was a very very strict lockdown. So that sort of breaks the chain of transmission. So brings the numbers down, brings the R factor down. And with that, coupled with a very advanced vaccination program, I think I could be wrong, but I guess UK is just trailing Israel at the moment in terms of the number of vaccinations. It's a small country, definitely. It's a lot easier to get a program successful in a country like UK than say India or anywhere else. It's a small country, definitely. But yeah, that we can't imply that wasn't a commendable job to be able to do that, regardless. So that, with the lockdowns and people adhering to the social distancing rules, masks, and all those things, now at the present moment, if you look at the current state of affairs, things are starting to open up. They prioritize the education sector, which I really felt very good about, because they thought about the children, the students in the universities or schools. They put them back first, because whatever you do, you will never be able to. In my opinion, I could be wrong, but you can't really substitute face-to-face learning with online learning for at least engineering or medical education. If I mean, I could be wrong, but that's what I feel. So they prioritize that, and then there was a gradual or eventual lifting of the lockdown. So at the moment, there are social restrictions with a number of 6. However, most things are open, and the economy is functional again. Restaurants, pubs are open. People are able to meet friends again. People are able to meet family again, which is very good. Traveling is allowed to a certain list of countries, with again quarantine restrictions when you get back. But yeah, things are starting to open up, and needless to say that they're still very cautious that things might get bad again. So we have a deadline of the 21st of June when all restrictions are lifted. But again, the data would guide that, if that is the right thing to do or not. But that sort of summarizes what happened in the UK, and I think Chinmay has summarized what happened in the US. But what I'd really like to know, in terms of how the pandemic happened in India, and because you're both doctors, you're both frontline workers, what's your take on that? What do you feel about the pandemic in India?
So it was very different for us as doctors. I mean, like India famously handled the first wave really well, and all that stuff has been discussed like millions of times, that we were good in the beginning and now we've sort of been really overwhelmed. But as doctors, it was extremely different, because when the lockdown started, unlike people of other professions, we couldn't work from home as such, and we saw patients every day. Of course, there was a fear of our safety as well, because we usually saw an OPD of 100 to 150 patients, and me being a gynecologist, people never stop having kids, so we still had women coming in for deliveries every day. We had emergencies every day. We did see, we did try and filter out the patients coming in. We try to make emergencies a priority rather than the regular visits and everything. And but it really didn't help much. Like we still had to see a lot of patients every day, and we had a lot of patients coming in, and we're talking to them in the OPD. And if because they couldn't hear us, nobody was used to wearing a mask, right? So they couldn't hear us, and we had so many patients, like when they couldn't hear us, they would take off their masks and be like, kya doctor, meko sunai nahi diya. So like funny experiences like that. So yeah, but most of all, we actually saw firsthand the impact of the pandemic on people and their families. Like earlier, people could enter the hospitals very freely. We could allow patients, relatives to visit them, and for families to be able to see the patient, talk to them. So there was a level of comfort that used to be there in the hospitals, but now suddenly everyone was stopped at the gate. We couldn't allow anybody to come in. Hospitals had become like a quarantine zone. We had a green zone, which is non-COVID, and a red zone, which is COVID. So there were, like, you couldn't allow people from the red zone to go to the green zone and vice versa. So a lot of things changed in how hospitals functioned. And because people were so scared of even getting out of their houses, and because of lockdown, it was very difficult for people to get out of their houses, because it was really strict in the beginning. So we saw a lot of patients suffer because because they just try to delay their visits to the hospital, because maybe they felt like it wasn't an emergency, and like they were just too scared to come to us. So we saw a lot of normal patients suffer. I think that was the main thing.
Yeah, and I precisely remember 19th of March last year. A week prior to 19th of March, everything was normal in India, and we were seeing all the patients in the OPD. We were allowed. I mean, we were carefree of touching a patient, talking to a patient, talking to the relatives of the patient, explaining them what exactly is happening to them. After 19th of March, suddenly everything changes, and we become very cautious because of this disease that the world has been, which has come to us, and we are basically now suddenly very cautious about talking to a patient, keeping distance from the patient. It's very difficult for us to change our habits, which are, in imbibed in at our spinal level. I mean, examining a patient, the human touch, the doctor's touch that we say, suddenly we saw that it's going. With time throughout the year, there were virtual OPDs that were happening. We were in the hospital seeing patients who were sitting at their home, and this is something which we would have never thought कि ऐसा कुछ होगा हमारे साथ में. And we would see patients, and the patients would be sitting at their home without the doctor's touch. And there were a lot of ups and downs throughout the year that we faced on our day-to-day life, on our professional level as well as our personal level. Talking about our professional levels, neurosurgery residents like me, we were suddenly asked to do COVID duties. So our specialty being something else, and we are expected to do a certain kind of a job, and for a disease that nobody understands in the world. Every month, every day, there are new regimes that are coming. There are new protocols that are coming, and even we are unaware of that. So competing with ourselves, the thing that we want to subdue our own fear and working for the patient has given us a altogether different experience. We were scared. We cannot say that doctors weren't scared in treating the patient. We were,
Our families were
yeah,
so
our
scared.
families were scared. But still, what you need to do, you have to do. So experiencing this ability of being a doctor was an experience for me. On our personal day-to-day life, we did face a lot of things. I mean, we had to go to the hospitals early in the morning. We used to come daily late in the evening. Everything is shut. We are not getting any groceries. We don't have any time to buy our groceries. So there were a lot of challenges, and the challenges that we faced from the society, like people started asking doctors to evacuate their houses as tenants, and there were a lot of problems that we faced. Nevertheless, it was an experience, and it is still being an experience that we are taking it very positively. And yeah, I mean, that is what I can say. So, I mean, how did you guys deal with the? I mean, initial period of the lockdown, there was acute shortage of the basic amenities. Like I told you, everything is shut down. Um, One has to really struggle for the basic amenities. Um, in India, at least, we had a lot of shortage of the basic amenities and how to struggle to get all these things. So, what were your experiences? I mean, Chinmay, Aditya.
Yeah, like toilet paper was
Yeah.
never an issue for us, but for like we saw it all over the news, that people are fighting over toilet paper, and also we're really curious to know how you guys dealt with it.
I mean, yeah, that became sort of like a funny joke, and so it got highlighted. But before all of that, I think personally, I may have done in various places, but doctors. I just wanted to thank all our doctors, you both included, for how you have dealt with this pandemic. Like you said, there was never a reason that could be given for doctors to stop what they were doing during the pandemic. I think we had a few sessions on the channel, in the last couple of weeks as well, where we spoke about just other things also, that people were getting impacted with. People were not just dying of COVID, and so I hope people understand that it's very very important, for doctors at the same time as COVID to treat other diseases as well. And if that patient at the time has COVID, there is no way of knowing. Sometimes in cases of emergency, you're not going to go and test patients unless and until they are exhibiting like severe COVID symptoms. And I'm just trying to give people. I mean, I guess people are smart, so they understand. But I just wanted to reiterate this point that sometimes doctors just have to put themselves first, literally, put themselves in front of the disease. Pretty much, the term warrior has been used a lot these days, and it's never been more true than before. I know, even in before COVID, there were instances where doctors have done heroic things, but nothing like this, and the majority of that community coming together. And Rohan, like you said, I hope the treatment of doctors has improved right now, in terms of society, and I hope that society is treating doctors the way they should. For in my book, there's doctors are right up there with the people. I come from a family where there's plenty of doctors, and I do understand what they've done for me and what they've done for others, and I've observed it very closely. So yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to that. But yeah, then coming to the lighter point, or not so light, however you look at it. Yeah, the toilet paper thing sort of got blown out of proportion, and yes, there was a shortage that we had for a few weeks, and it was just a plethora of calls that we made to anybody around us saying, okay, well, can we borrow some? And it really wasn't like peeling paper and making like different things out of it. It was just like, what happened was people sort of got into this panic frenzy and everyone started hoarding their stuff. So we started calling all those people that we knew that hoarded, and we like, can we borrow a few? And so we'd borrow a few and try to get through that phase. And then it was back in stores, but it wasn't just that. There was a shortage of a lot of other things. Like even when you went to the Indian store, you wanted to buy dal and rice and anything that is non-perishable, canned beans or whatever. People were stocking on them like there's going to be some kind of a zombie apocalypse. And I think that's also kind of a difference in reaction. Like over here, generally people have bigger space, right, to store things and everything, so they can afford to store, and they do store. So like I said previously, everything then was rationed to people, saying, okay, there are only you can only take 2 packets of dal or 2 packets of rice in Indian stores, or even with like toilet paper, you can only take 1 pack or 1 pack of tissue paper. And then the problem was this just a spike in demand. And it's very difficult because things are forecasted, a year in advance, and everything has to go properly. But just the spike in demand was difficult to deal with, and so that kind of compounded the effect, at least over here. So yeah, I think that was sort of the main thing with the shortage, is just people hoarding. And I think, if people were a little bit more responsible towards the beginning, we may not have had all those jokes. So I don't know whether to be thankful for it or complain about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you had to borrow something like toilet paper. I don't think anyone could have ever foreseen that that could actually happen.
It was a fresh
Uh,
roll, just by the way.
yes, of
I
course.
would like to clarify that.
Obviously. Yeah, so for us, like obviously there's a lot of negativity surrounding the pandemic and everything, but we had a few experiences in our practice where a lot of patients who did not expect the kind of treatment they would get. Like we had a lot of patients who, for me personally, who had COVID, and it was time for them to deliver their babies and all, and then we took care of them, we took care of the babies, and both mother and baby went back healthy. And the families were actually really thankful because they did not actually get to see the mother or the child, till about 2 or 3 days into the whole thing. So, they were really happy and they were really thankful about, the safety of their family and all of that. So, Aditya, what for you was, were some of the highlights during your experience of the lockdown?
Well, I would certainly say that the lockdown was, or I would say that throughout the pandemic has been an incredible time for everyone, I suppose, and in different ways, in multiple ways, if you look at it. But yeah, for me, it was also an incredible time. Well, I started a job somewhere near the beginning of the pandemic, and I was hoping that everything would sort of sort out itself, but. So this job required a sort of security clearance. For that, there was a hell lot of paperwork required, and because of the sudden lockdown, I couldn't get things done when I had to. So yeah, getting all the papers sorted, not being able to send them physically, you'd have to do like digital copies, soft copies of the same things, which again you've got to explain to a lot of people that yeah, I have this, but I can't send this because of the lockdown. So the government did understand, but again, there are things that can't be done alternatively. However, uh, after a certain while, things did happen. There were steps taken to accommodate these kind of cases. So, and in terms of highlight, I definitely say it was again a very different experience. If you think about it, I've started a new job. I've never even seen my office yet. I've not been there. I was talking to my colleague the other day, and we were discussing that we've produced so much data, him and I, and we've never even met each other. So I don't know anyone beyond the computer screen that I see. So that is, I mean, who could have imagined this in 2019, that you'd have worked so much with someone and never even seen their face. I don't even know if they exist in the real world. What if I'm talking to an AI? These kind of things. So that was an incredible experience. That was definitely one of the major things. Then the second thing is, again, like as you'd expect, I live fairly far away from my family, and that was one thing that constantly started coming onto my mind. That yeah, are they all right? Again, I have a few doctors in the family as well. Again, uh, my cousin and her husband, they were both frontline workers. And I'm sure they were taking all the precautions, but you're always nervous because things can go wrong at times, and thankfully nothing has gone wrong. They've done a fantastic job, and so have you both. So thank you very much for that. I have an aunt who's a doctor who's been attending to patients. She's a gynecologist as well, just like you. So she's been attending patients. She lives in Bangalore. Uh, so that was always on the mind, that yeah, are they safe, are they taking all the precautions, are they getting the vaccine on time, are they able to take care of themselves, because that was another important questions. I mean, you guys would relate that you were being pushed to the limits because there were so many patients coming in, but I mean, you're humans as well, you're not robots. Like, you can't just be fed with a lot of patients and be able to deal with it. You have a limit too. But you've gone completely beyond your limits. You've done everything to take care of people, which is incredible. But yeah, that was something that, being far away, you do all sorts of permutations and combinations in your mind, that yeah, are they safe, are they taking care of things. So that was another thing. And then picking up one of the point that Chinmay mentioned, which was about supply chain in the beginning. So we had a boiler failure in our house in the UK, and that is something that would have taken a day to fix. But because of the supply chain, we couldn't get the parts in time, and it was I think about 2 degrees above Celsius. No, I think it was 3 degrees above Celsius. This was somewhere in the middle of October, and because we couldn't get the parts, we couldn't have the boiler working for a week, and we were taking cold showers for a week, which was, it was an agonizing experience. I'd never want to do that again in my life. But yeah, I mean, it was what it was that time. So uh, that was one thing. And my best friend, he got married, and well, I'd always told myself that he is one person that I have to attend his wedding, because there were things behind that wedding that I knew were not going to happen. So, but yeah, I missed it. And although it happened in Holland, it wasn't that it was in India, so I couldn't come. But yeah, I couldn't attend that wedding because of the lockdown. So that is one thing that I sort of miss. But yeah, I think we'll celebrate that again. Uh, but yeah, in terms of highlight, to summarize this, it was an incredible experience with lots happening. Some very good memories, some not so good memories. But yeah, I think it was overall an incredible time, I guess. But what I'd certainly say is, well, during the pandemic, as you've mentioned, that you before you could provide personal care to the patients, like the doctor's touch, like Rohan mentioned, and after the pandemic hit, you had to take a lot of precautions. So you had to be very cautious about what you do and how you do things. So in the general sense and in overall sense, and like, again, also what I'd definitely like you to factor in is the kind of sentiments that you were seeing. There were definitely people who were very supportive, or very, very appreciative of the healthcare fraternity. But then there were some idiots as well who were against the healthcare fraternity, who were asking doctors to vacate. So there were people like that. But in general, what was the importance of human interaction for you guys? How did you see that?
I mean, human interaction, definitely, as I told you, I mean, one was very scared during the initial phase of the lockdown, and then we gradually became used to it. So, talking to the patients, talking to the patients who might be COVID positive, we I remember in the initial week of the lockdown, I was posted in the casualty, and as a frontline worker, you don't know who is positive and who is negative for COVID, and working for around 8 hours, 6 hours in that hazmat suit, and I mean, people are scared, you are scared, and the people expect you to explain exactly why things are happening to them, what exactly is the disease, and trying to communicate the things that the patient wants to listen to. I mean, it's not like the patient wants to listen to what he wants to hear, basically. Even if you tell them what exactly is going on, even though you are confused about the disease, because nobody knows. So it was a difficult way of communicating things to the patient. when you're tired, when you're not used to wearing that hazmat suit for the initial time, and you're sweating throughout, and still you have to explain the patient that he is, she is going to be all right, and we will take care of them, was a different experience for me. And I mean, what about you, Narayani?
I think essentially, people have this thing that unless doctor ka haath lage, they feel like the doctor hasn't even looked at them properly, or they don't, they're not caring enough. So it was really difficult for us to even convince patients that we still have their best interests at the base of what we're doing, because we were wearing those hazmat suits, as he said, and at the same time we were wearing masks and gloves and a cap and everything. And earlier, at least this is in India, at least we've seen that, people find it kind of insulting if you're wearing gloves before touching them and all that. I mean, I'm talking about the slightly lower socioeconomic strata. I'm not talking about the educated people. So they feel like, Arey, this doctor is not even ready to touch us, and that kind of stuff. So we had to do that all the time. Like, I don't remember the last time I touched a patient without wearing gloves. So and earlier, like before the pandemic, we used to do that all the time. Like, obviously, when we're just examining someone's abdomen, we don't really bother so much. But there was so little that we knew about the pandemic that we just took all the precautions that we could. We just assumed that it was we could contract it through whatever route. So we had to take all these precautions, and yeah, we lost a lot of that human touch that was there earlier. And of course, apart from that, we were so scared of even meeting our families, because out of all the people in the world, we were basically the ones who were going out every day and exposing ourselves to a lot of people. So although we did take precautions there, that there was always a lingering doubt whether we'll actually be able to prevent the disease from happening, or we'll be able to protect ourselves adequately. So we were not as worried about ourselves as we were about our families, because I was when in the initial part of the pandemic, I don't think I went home to visit my parents for like a good 2 or 3 months, even though they live in the same city. So even now, I don't think I have since I'm posted in the COVID wards right now, I haven't really gone home to see them, even though my exams got over like a month ago. I haven't seen them since. So it's kind of sad, but at the same time, we are very practical about it, because we've seen it firsthand. So we really don't want to be taking any risks. So we were like, we can talk over the phone, we can talk over video call if we really want to see each other, but it's just not worth the risk to actually go home and expose our parents. So yeah, so it is obviously very important. We've realized how much we miss meeting our family, meeting our friends whenever we want. So that has definitely changed, but at the same time, we realized that technology has advanced so far that even now we don't have to sit in the same room to have this conversation. We are in completely different parts of the world, and we're still able to talk to each other as if we're sitting face to face. So it's good and bad, I would say.
Yeah, and things like the highlight of our year used to be going to a conference, meeting our friends,
Yeah.
and attending a conference, being in a different city altogether. And this has completely stopped. Now all conferences are online. Yeah, so I don't know whether it'll go back to normal or not. I hope it does. But these are the things that we used to look up to, that we have a certain conference at a certain period of time in the year. We'll get to meet friends.
We used to prepare
we used to prepare for
for
it.
these conferences.
Yeah, and I mean, human touch, as Narayani and I have told you, has a bit changed. I mean, prior to a surgery, before COVID, one used to keep his hand over the back of the patient and used to tell him ki chinta mat karo, tum theek ho gaye. Keeping your hand over the patient's hand or his back during the initial period of COVID was very difficult for us. And that was very difficult for us to believe that we are being I mean, cautious of touching the patient.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was
Unable to
very,
do that.
yeah, and it was very difficult for us because as we also are human beings, and understanding the disease and slowly becoming aware about it and making the patient aware about it, and then starting to talk to them about it was the thing that we had to learn.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's so important, and all of a sudden, that was the other thing, right? We never gradually sort of progressed into this no human interaction. It just happened one day, and you just could not do any of it. So, yeah, I can imagine when you sort of lose that one aspect of communication with patients, and um, I know I'm a very bad patient, to be honest. Like I'm like a child when it comes to being a patient. If I get sick, then the whole house has to come down with me. But I do understand that reassuring touch, and like the doctor saying, "Okay, I can like, you don't have the temperature or something like that, right?" Um, that for me, like thermometers and all don't mean anything. Like I need that physical interaction with the doctor, and all that just stopped from the doctor's point of view. But even otherwise, like the physical interaction stopped. I played a lot of sports. Now you couldn't play sports and do all of those things. It just took a toll, and I know that these are sort of like quote unquote privileged problems to have, but the fact that it just stopped, everyone had to deal with it in their own way. I think at this point, first of all, thank you everyone who has been sending us all the comments, love, questions. That's really, really nice. I did see a very interesting comment that said this it's like a sci-fi movie. And actually, we did right in the beginning of the pandemic, like maybe a month later or something, like three, four of us would like get together and watch movies. And we actually did see a movie where they actually spoke about the coronavirus and how the whole, I forget the name of that movie, but that how that affected. And yeah, that's exactly it, like a sci-fi
Contagion.
movie.
It
I
was
think
called
that's what it was,
Contagion.
right? And it was doing the
Yeah.
rounds all over. So yeah, it's totally like a sci-fi movie. We just don't have those fancy shots and whatnot, But yeah, it's totally like that. And the second question, I think we saw a few questions about how different governments have handled it. So, firstly, I'm not like the authority on sort of how the government does things and everything. I do understand very marginally, but more than sort of saying the differences between the U.S. and India governments and how the people sort of reacted. I think I personally would like to believe that the governments are doing their best. It's something that none of our leaders have seen in their lifetime, however old they are now. We have a particularly older president, even in the US. But yeah, they've probably never seen this before in their lives. And so they are trying to cope with it the best they can, regardless of my political beliefs. Um, and yeah, people are also a very, very important aspect of it. I was fortunate enough to be in India a couple of months ago, and I did see that once the lockdown opened, people never sort of eased their transition into anything, and this is not to say, whether it's lack of education or whatever. I don't think that was it. It was just that people are getting cooped up and frustrated, and so they just blow their steam off altogether at once. Unfortunately, we're fighting an invisible enemy, so you can't see it, right? It's going, you don't know where it is. So it's better that you just stay protected as a person and don't go out and don't do things you don't have to do. That's how I always maintain. Like for me, a democracy is made majorly of people. Um, you want to question the government. There's no doubt about it. But a democracy is people. It is you. It is your country. So you have to do your part in like sort of doing good things for the country. And yeah, you can sort of criticize the government as it is your right. A few things could definitely have been done better, maybe in India, maybe even in the US. But me as a person, I would genuinely try to think that we are doing anywhere in the world, we are doing the best we can with the resources that we have available. Every place just faces different problems. In the US now, we are fortunate we don't have that population density. Things are opening up. So, things are getting better and it will happen in India. I just want to sort of go back a few points saying maybe it was very difficult, for you not to have that human interaction. But this discussion, the new normal, it is not going to look very different from the old normal. I'm very, very happy to sort of say that, because once we sort of lift the mask restrictions over here in the US, that is sort of just the last restrictions that's there between COVID, pre-COVID and post-COVID. That's it. Today, all we're doing is wearing masks. Yeah, we do have a better sense of hygiene and all, and that's all great. That doesn't interfere with our lives, though. So the mask order, once it's lifted, we're back to what it was before. We just will
Yeah.
always have this etched in our memories, and that's something that can't be taken away. But at least from a day-to-day, things do want to get better. So I think I'd like to just sort of ask you all. So I know we come from I don't know, at least I do come from a very privileged standpoint, and so I can ask this question, and I know a lot of people um have had a very bad experience in the past years, and my heart goes out to them, and I wish things get better for them. Um, but yeah, I would like to sort of take this on a note where I would want to ask each of you, like, what are the positive changes that you all have made? With this pandemic, we got this whole time to ourselves. Not doctors specifically didn't get that kind of time, but living in this sort of the new normal, what it was. So, what were the positive changes that you all made to your lives? If Rohan, you want to take it, and then we can go that.
Let's take this. Let's take a question from the comments. That
Do you think you can treat a patient virtually? What is your opinion? What is your experience?
treating a patient virtually, if given an option, I would not. I can, that I have known now. So we've been treating patient virtually since the past 6 months, and I think we are doing a fair job in that. Would I want to treat patients virtually in the future? No, because being a doctor, I like to interact with the patient. I like to hear his story. I like to examine a patient. That human touch that we are talking about is very important for me, and it is the essence of my practice. So, whether I can treat a patient virtually, 100% I can. Would I want to? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think as a gynecologist, I don't even think I can treat a patient virtually. I have to see my patients. I mean, it might be limited to maybe reading a few reports which they send over WhatsApp or something, but apart from that, I have to see them. I have to examine them. I can't. I personally cannot treat patients virtually. So yeah. So about the positive changes that happened.
Positive changes. Okay, so there have been a lot of negativity and depression that has been going on around. One has to be very positive. I mean, I can end it by, I just read it somewhere on WhatsApp. I can just quote it. I mean, for the human race, we can say हर रोज गिरकर भी मुकम्मल खड़े हैं. ए जिंदगी देख मेरे हौसले तुझसे भी बड़े हैं. जिंदगी एक आईना है. ये तभी हंसेगी जब तुम हंसोगे. So by this thing, I just can say, be strong, be positive, and just keep surviving. दो गज की, व्हाट डू यू से, वो 2 गज की दूरी, मास्क है जरूरी, सब फॉलो करो यार, हमारी ड्यूटी थोड़ी कम करो.
Yeah, I think we have to be a little positive. We have to take it a little lightly because this whole situation is actually very heavy on. I think everybody, not just us. It's heavy on mostly even on the people who don't understand it. So yeah, I think what I have learned is, I used to, I used to be so busy and I used to be so engrossed in what I was doing that I lost touch with a lot of friends and even family for that matter. But the pandemic kind of made me realize that there are so many people who just one fine day they're okay, and the next day you're never going to see them again. So I that made me realize that I really want to be in touch with my friends and family. And I just randomly started calling people, and I'm an introvert. So it takes me a lot of planning to even pick up the phone and talk to people. So I just randomly started calling people and talking to them and having a nice conversation. So taking a step back and, like these cliches that we hear, stop and smell the roses and everything, that it like I actually realized what that meant during the pandemic. I really understood that it's really, really important to have certain people in your life, and keeping in touch with them is a basic aspect of it. And even though it was electronically, like over the phone or even over a video call, but that's enough. You don't really have to meet people to stay in touch. And I mean, I would just like to finish by saying that I read this somewhere, like in the rush to go back to normal, just take this time to think about what kind of normal you actually want to get back to. Do you want, the same lives, the same stress? We saw really, this is, it's not proven or anything, but this is from my personal experience. We saw a lot of infertility cases which actually started conceiving on their own once this lockdown started. So we kind of thought that maybe the stress that comes with running around every day, especially in a city like Mumbai, everyone is working. So the stress that comes with just that bhag dod, if that gets alleviated, I think a lot of problems that people have just start solving themselves. So this is a very physical example of how stress affects people and how the lack of stress improves people's lives. So I think we should just uh, think about what about our normal or our previous lives do we actually want to get back to. So yeah.
What about you, Aditya? What is your take-home message from this COVID?
Yeah, I guess there was a question that was highlighted again. Apologies, I missed answering that one. So that was to do with the difference between the private and the government sector during the pandemic. Well, so before I can answer this question, and to be able to answer this question, we've also got to put into perspective the objectives that drives a private sector company and the government sector. The well the private sector is all about profits. It's all about being able to make money out of what they're spending in. The government sector, for that matter, works very differently. Yes, the government definitely wants to make money. They don't want to run into a loss. But what I mean is the intention of the government sector, or at least where we work, which is more of a research and innovation kind of a thing. Their objective is to sort of lay the foundation for the private sector to pick things up, and that is their driving motive. So when the pandemic hit to a private sector company, they had to minimize the impact of the pandemic on their cash flow, and headcount, unfortunately, and I'm sure it sounds extremely harsh when I say this, but headcount is a major cash drain on any company. And the easiest way for them to minimize the impact, if the cash flow is reduced, is to minimize the headcount, which is why the private sector started looking into getting rid of people that were redundant, and that's what they did to start with. Well, obviously, all the organizations, they definitely made an attempt to start with minimizing wherever they could, but the collateral damage was also a great deal of headcount. Whereas the government sector, on the other hand, was more supportive, because if you think about it, in the UK, the government started this furlough scheme where they were paying up to £2,500 to all the people that had been furloughed, so they were not able to go to work. So if the government sector starts firing their own employees, it wouldn't sound very congruent, if you like, because they're providing furloughs to a lot of private sector people, that they're getting rid of own people. And I would really be thankful towards my organization, because they were really supportive of mental health. The first thing that they came up with was, it's okay to be okay and it's okay to not be okay, which I think was a really good thing to do. They were constantly very supportive. When I told my manager that, you know what, I'm a bit worried about my parents, my family, I'd like to just go back home and stay with them for a while. Can I work from there? He was like, yeah, absolutely. Don't have to think about it twice. Just go. So that's what I would say. The government sector, that's where it comes in. That they're more about taking care of their employees. They're actually about developing their employees, and I'm sure private sector does that. But yes, the driving forces are very different. The private sector is more about profit. The government sector is more about doing things rather than just profit. So it is a factor, but not the major one. But now, sort of getting back to what we were discussing about the positive impacts. Yes, certainly. Getting in touch with people, that has been a major thing. Talking to people, I mean, before you'd come back home from work and you get a call from your friend and you're like, oh, I've had a long day, I'll probably talk to them tomorrow, I'll speak to you this weekend. But now you get a call and you're like, yeah, let's talk. You set up a call to talk. Maybe just have a drink with them on Zoom. I mean, you're sitting a world apart, but still, if as long as you're able to see each other with a drink in your hand, it's fine. It's cool. So that was one of the major things. The other thing was, I definitely would say that I've slowed myself down. I've slowed myself down a lot, because before I would take things to my heart very quickly. I would start panicking about things. But during the course of this pandemic, and a lot of incidents that have happened in my personal life throughout the pandemic, that have encouraged me to slow down, take a step, then another step. It's always good to take one, take two. There's no rush. Nobody's running everywhere, and the most important thing is your own peace of mind, your own mental health. And uh, I know it might sound vague, but mental health is extremely important, and it is very, very vital for everybody to take care of that. And it's not just about people our age; it's across all ages. I'm sure our parents have their own worries. I'm sure our grandparents have their own worries. But taking care of mental health is extremely important, and that's one thing that I've taken away from this pandemic. So yeah, I think these were the positive aspects. But in terms of things being all right, I'm sure they would be all right. And again, I would again thank the doctors, your good selves as well, for what you've done for us. So yeah, I'm sure things will be back on track, and that is another positive thing to think about. That yeah, it will be okay in a bit, but it will be okay. And Chinmay, do you have anything to add to this?
Um, yeah, I mean, I would just sort of like to echo all the points that have been mentioned, um, about having the opportunity to just, become aware, talk to family. I know, I'm having a lot more conversations with people that I otherwise would not have had. Just sort of taking yourself out of that rat race. There is a lot to be said for mental health. We've got the opportunity now, and I hope like people grab it with both hands. And I think organizations, both private and government, also understand that, for people to sort of stay at home, work remote. There's a stat over here that 30% of people might change their jobs during the pandemic because they would like to go to something they actually love, or like to change certain parameters about their old life. So yeah, I mean, just being mindful of those things, doing something you love, taking the stress out of your life. I've also sort of got that opportunity. We've sort of grasped it, and I've wanted to move to California for like, I don't know, the last 6 7 years. And we finally made it. I'm sitting here. We moved a week ago. You might still see like boxes in the background, and I apologize, but we were able to make that move, and we're still working on a lot of things with our life. We're still a young couple, the both of us, but um, we made certain things happen that I am sure, had it not been for the pandemic, would not have happened. These are like good things for us, right? We also were able to scale down our lives, which is what I would definitely urge to people. Like, scale down your lives, don't be attached to things. Try to clean out your houses, do these very little things. They help you be mindful in life. They help you sort of value what's important. That's your relationships, your people. Don't worry about how much you own and what. It's all going to get lost. I know we had some programs on this very channel that I follow, and we were talking about, what is spirituality, and then sort of not going into a very philosophical discussion. It's about, being valuing your relationships and treasuring your life. And the pandemic has taught us that, with our minor differences as sort of people, those sort of just get wiped away. We are all just like one community, and we can, as humans, just get together, um, and help solve a lot of things, and we can battle something like this pandemic too. So yeah, I've realized all these things, and that's a very positive change that I see in myself. And I'm sure I attribute this to this time that we have gotten with the pandemic. um, I think so. That being said, it's been like an awesome discussion to have with all of you. I got to know so many more perspectives. Again, thank you to all of the audience who've sent their comments and questions and sort of aided this discussion and provided their support. I think it was really awesome to have this discussion and get the perspective of everything else. I just like to say I thank you again to the doctors and all of our frontline workers, and hope things get
Absolutely.
really better for you really soon, and this new normal looks very nice. And but we as mankind are more aware of things around us, and can um have a better life moving forward once things get better. So yeah, again, I love to have this discussion with all of y'all, and it's been great.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's been amazing.
Absolutely.
And I hope that we can have more discussions like this. I mean, obviously not about the pandemic, about something else this time. And I hope we can, continue to interact like this in the future. It's very nice to be talking to people of the same age and in completely different situations. It's really
Yeah.
enlightening to know all these different situations. So yeah, I think
That's all
you
about
have
it. Yeah.
some, yeah. So I know for a fact that
We have definitely exceeded the
yeah,
time.
we've exceeded the time, and it was an amazing discussion.
Absolutely.
I know that one thing I'm really looking forward to once this lockdown opens is just taking a walk, like I just want to be taking a walk outside. So on that note, I think let's end this discussion today, and I hope we can all be positive, and I hope that's the message that we have relayed through this entire discussion. So thank you so much for being
Thank you.
with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone who
Thanks.
watched. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you and good night.
Good night. Bye. Thank you.